Eckroth. As mentioned by Gore Vidal in his novel, filmmaking in America and the western portion of the nation has always been a shaping force of culture in the realms of journalism, fashion, manners, language, and overall design. The year is 1926. Henry Ford just announced the introduction of a 40-hour work week. Marilyn Monroe was born. Actors are huddled on a soundstage, sweating because the deafening 100 degrees inside is not air conditioned. The camera starts rolling and you mouth your lines, but the audience will never actually hear your voice. Bang, 1927, the conglomerate media corporations such as Warner Brothers realizes a dazzling new film that includes sound behind the picture on screen. The Jazz Singer was monumental for introducing sound and picture. This moment in history launches what we now know as Hollywood into the moon in terms of people buying into a picture show. With this, media coverage has now expanded from just focusing on behind the scenes and the spectacle of filmmaking to brand new stardom that allows the audience to actually hear the people on screen. The New York Times introduced their first article about filmmaking in a long-standing column titled The Screen. In 1918, what's to come for the next 2 decades are worldwide renowned stars such as John Wayne, Henry Fonda, Cary Grant, and most notably Humphrey Bogart. While the 1930s was a build-up for a major world war to come in the latter half of the decade, Hollywood underwent one of the biggest transitionary periods of its lifespan. The addition of both sound and color allowed people to enjoy short periods of leisure during a major economic depression going on for the small price of a quarter. In addition, those who found themselves illiterate could now enjoy films without reading. Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz are among the most notable late 30s and early 40s films that truly make up what those 2 decades meant for the history of film and journalism. Apart from making movies themselves, some of the most famous patrons of the arts struggle with alcoholism. This focus on an actor's life behind the scenes was actually to be found more intriguing to some people than the film itself. Columnists such as Haida Hopper and Noella Parsons were revolutionary in the sense that they followed the gossip around the Hollywood sphere. National circulations such as U.S. Weekly and People are some of the most sought-after magazines simply due to the fact that new, juicy news was always being presented. Whether it's true or not doesn't really matter. 1950s, stars like James Dean, Marlon Brando, Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly were among the most well-known people around the world. No one took the show like Marilyn Monroe did. Censor boards like the MPAA were so strict that you could not put some things on screen, but they realized after having gorgeous stars like Marilyn Monroe that would increase the scale of Hollywood and selling tickets as a whole. News organizations did everything they could to cover a story on Marilyn. In a sense that there wasn't always a story to be covered, this is when gossip started to become more of a normalcy. With the Cold War and Red Scare being so present within the culture, a so-called Hollywood blacklist was disseminated among production companies to not hire those deemed communist. Over 300 names of directors, writers, actors, and producers were barred from being able to create art within Hollywood. This leads to an equally revolutionary decade of filmmaking on the level of the addition of sound, the 1960s. Commonly known as the new decade of Hollywood, the 1960s were a vast cultural shift in not only Hollywood, but America as a whole. As tensions were rising on the conflict within Vietnam, young artists wanted to stray away from the normative and into the future. Drug culture inched its way into both production and behind the scenes through a film like Easy Rider, 2 hippies on their way across America to make their fortune peddling drugs. What is said to be among the most controversial films of all time, Bonnie and Clyde took America by the hand and led them into a new age. The apparent violence on screen, partial nudity, and lack of respect for a law-abiding public took people by surprise. From that point on, not a soul looked back, but we're constantly looking into the future for what's to come from Hollywood.